Karen Simmons slammed her car door with a resounding thud, her perfectly manicured nails tapping impatiently against the steering wheel. As she stormed up the driveway, her designer heels clicked against the immaculate pavement, a clear indication of her unwavering determination. Reaching the front door, she jabbed the doorbell with unrestrained force, her brow furrowed in a deep scowl. When the door finally swung open, revealing a startled young couple, Karen wasted no time in unleashing her tirade. "Do you have any idea what time it is?" she bellowed, her voice laced with indignation. "It's past 10 p.m., and I've been trying to sleep for hours now. The constant banging and drilling is completely unacceptable." The couple, David and Sarah, exchanged a bewildered look before David tentatively spoke up. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we've been soundproofing the walls. We've tried to keep the noise to a minimum, but—" "Soundproofing," Karen interrupted, her eyes narrowing to slits. "I don't care what you're doing. This is a quiet neighborhood, and I won't tolerate this kind of destruction, especially at this hour." Sarah stepped forward, a pleading look on her face. "We're really sorry about the noise, ma'am. We're just trying to create a more peaceful living environment for our new baby. We'll try to be as quiet as possible, I promise." But Karen was having none of it. "A baby? Well, that's just wonderful," she spat, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "As if this neighborhood didn't have enough of you breeders already. Now I have to deal with your constant racket." David's brow furrowed, and he opened his mouth to respond, but Karen quickly cut him off. "I'm calling the police. This is completely unacceptable, and I won't stand for it any longer." Before the couple could protest, Karen whirled around and stormed back to her car, snatching her phone from her purse. As she waited for the dispatcher to answer, a wicked smile spread across her face. This was going to be the last time those troublemakers disrupted her beauty sleep. Meanwhile, David and Sarah stood at the door, their faces etched with disbelief. "Can you believe the nerve of that woman?" David said, shaking his head. Sarah placed a comforting hand on his arm. "Just try to ignore her, honey. She's obviously got some issues to work through. Let's just focus on getting the soundproofing done and making our home as peaceful as possible for the baby." David nodded, his jaw still clenched with frustration. "You're right. We can't let her ruin this for us. Come on, let's get back to work. The sooner we're done, the sooner we can enjoy some much-needed quiet." As the couple retreated back into their home, the sound of sirens pierced the air, signaling the arrival of Karen's unwelcome guests. The stage was set for a confrontation that would rock the quiet suburban neighborhood to its core. The shrill wail of the police sirens sent a thrill of satisfaction through Karen as she watched the squad car pull up to the curb. Straightening her blouse and smoothing a hand over her perfectly coiffed hair, she strode over to meet the officers, a self-righteous expression firmly in place. "Thank goodness you're here," she declared as the two uniformed men approached. "There's been an ongoing noise disturbance from the neighbors, and I simply can't take it anymore." The older of the two officers, Sergeant Grimes, eyed Karen with a measure of skepticism. "Ma'am, we received a call about a noise complaint. Can you tell us exactly what's been going on?" Karen launched into an impassioned tirade, embellishing the details to make the situation sound as dire as possible. "It's been going on for hours. Constant banging, drilling, the works. I've been trying to sleep, but it's simply impossible with all that racket. And now they have the nerve to have a baby in that house. It's just too much." Sergeant Grimes raised a hand, cutting off Karen's rant. "All right, ma'am, we'll go have a look. But keep in mind that a certain level of noise during reasonable hours is generally permitted, especially for home improvement projects." "Reasonable hours?" Karen scoffed. "Since when is 10 p.m. a reasonable hour for that kind of disruption? These people need to be taught a lesson." The other officer, a younger man named Diaz, cleared his throat. "We'll assess the situation and determine if any laws have been broken. In the meantime, I'd suggest trying to work this out amicably with your neighbors first." Karen shot him an imperious glare. Amicably, "Ha, those people are completely unreasonable. The only way to deal with them is to come down hard and show them who's boss around here." Sergeant Grimes exchanged a weary look with Officer Diaz before leading the way towards the front door. Karen followed close behind, her lips pressed into a thin, self-satisfied line. This was her chance to put those troublemakers in their place once and for all. As the officers knocked on the door, David and Sarah emerged, apprehension etched on their faces. Karen stood back, arms crossed, her gaze unwavering as the confrontation unfolded. Sergeant Grimes cleared his throat as David and Sarah cautiously opened the door. "Good evening, folks. We've received a noise complaint from your neighbor, and we're here to investigate." David glanced nervously at Karen, who was standing behind the officers with a triumphant expression. "Of course, officer. We've been working on some soundproofing projects, but we tried to keep the noise to a minimum, especially during the late hours." "Soundproofing, huh?" Sergeant Grimes nodded, his gaze sweeping over the couple. "Mind if we take a look around?" "Not at all. Please come in," Sarah replied, ushering the officers inside. Karen made a show of following them, her heels clicking against the hardwood floors as she surveyed the scene. The house was neat and well-maintained, with various tools and materials scattered about. Sergeant Grimes and Officer Diaz examined the work areas, asking a few questions about the project's scope and timeline. "So you're telling me that all this noise is just from soundproofing?" Sergeant Grimes asked, his brow furrowed. "Yes, sir," David replied. "We have a newborn baby, and we want to create a more peaceful environment for her. We've been trying our best to keep the disruption to a minimum, but I guess we still managed to upset our neighbor." At this, Karen let out a derisive snort. "Upset. That's the understatement of the century. I've been trying to sleep for hours, and it's been an absolute nightmare." Officer Diaz turned to face her, his expression neutral. "Ma'am, from what we've seen, your neighbors appear to be within their rights to conduct home improvement projects, even at this hour. As long as they're not violating any local noise ordinances, there's not much we can do." Karen's face flushed with indignation. But this is unacceptable. They're ruining my beauty sleep, and I won't stand for it." Sergeant Grimes held up a hand, silencing her. "I understand your frustration, ma'am, but the law is the law. Unless the noise level exceeds reasonable limits, we can't intervene. My advice would be to try talking to your neighbors and see if you can reach a compromise." Karen opened her mouth to protest, but the sergeant cut her off. "If the situation escalates, you're welcome to file another complaint. But for now, I'd suggest trying to work this out peacefully." Fuming, Karen glared at David and Sarah, who stood there with a mixture of relief and trepidation. As the officers turned to leave, she knew she had to find another way to put these troublemakers in their place. After all, she was Karen Simmons, and no one crossed her without facing the consequences. As the police officers made their way back to their squad car, Karen's mind was racing. She couldn't believe that the authorities had failed to take her side. After all, she was an upstanding member of the community, and these new neighbors were clearly the ones causing the disturbance. Determined to find a way to get the upper hand, Karen stormed back to her own home, slamming the door behind her. Pacing back and forth in her immaculate living room, she tried to come up with a plan. "There has to be something I can do to make those people pay," she muttered under her breath. "They can't just waltz in and ruin my peace and quiet like this." Suddenly, an idea struck her. Rushing to her desk, she began furiously typing on her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard. A twisted smile spread across her face as she hit send on the email. "That'll teach them to mess with Karen Simmons," she said aloud, chuckling to herself. Over at David and Sarah's house, the couple was trying to get back to their soundproofing project, but the confrontation with their neighbor had left them on edge. "I can't believe that woman," David said, shaking his head in disbelief. "The nerve of her to call the cops on us for trying to make our home more comfortable for our baby. Sarah placed a comforting hand on his arm. I know, honey, but at least the officers saw reason. Hopefully, she'll just leave us alone now. Just then, the sound of a delivery truck pulling up outside caught their attention. David furrowed his brow. I wonder what that's about. We didn't order anything, did we? The couple stepped outside to see a burly delivery man carrying a large package up their driveway. Delivery for David and Sarah Hendricks, he announced, setting the box down on their doorstep. That's us, David said, confusion evident in his voice. I don't remember ordering anything, though. The delivery man shrugged. Well, someone must have. Just sign here, please. As David scribbled his signature, Sarah examined the package, her eyes widening in surprise. It's a roach bomb kit, she said, her voice laced with disbelief. David's head snapped up, and he stared at his wife, realization dawning on his face. You don't think? No, she couldn't have. But as they brought the package inside and opened it, the truth became painfully clear. Someone had sent them a high-powered insecticide, intended to eliminate an entire infestation of roaches. David and Sarah exchanged a worried glance, their hearts sinking. It seemed that their neighbor, Karen, was not about to back down without a fight. David and Sarah stared at the ominous package on their kitchen counter, their expressions a mix of disbelief and concern. You don't think she actually? Sarah's voice trailed off, the unspoken implication hanging heavy in the air. David shook his head, his brow furrowed. I can't believe she would stoop this low. I mean, a roach bomb. That's just plain cruel, even for Karen. Carefully, he opened the package, revealing the various canisters and instructions within. Sarah peered over his shoulder, her lips pressed into a thin line. We have to do something about this, she said, her voice laced with determination. We can't just let her get away with this. David sighed, running a hand through his hair. I know, but what can we do? The police already told her they couldn't intervene unless the noise level was excessive. And now this. Sarah's eyes narrowed, a spark of defiance flickering within. Well, maybe we need to take this into our own hands. We can't let her bully us like this, not when we're just trying to create a safe, peaceful home for our family. David hesitated, the implications of her words weighing heavily on him. You mean, confront her? I don't know, Sarah. That seems like it could make things a lot worse. What choice do we have? Sarah retorted, her hands clenching into fists. We can't just sit back and let her terrorize us. It's time we stand up for ourselves, even if it means going head-to-head with that witch. Sensing the determination in his wife's voice, David nodded reluctantly. All right, but let's at least try to reason with her first. Maybe we can find a compromise or something. Sarah let out a breath, her shoulders relaxing slightly. Okay, we'll try that. But if she's still being unreasonable, all bets are off. I'm not going to let her get away with this. With a renewed sense of purpose, the couple set about dismantling the roach bomb, their minds racing with thoughts of how to handle the confrontation with their troublesome neighbor. Meanwhile, across the street, Karen sat in her living room, a smug expression on her face. She had done her research, and she knew that a high-powered roach bomb would be the perfect way to teach those upstarts a lesson. After all, nothing sent a message like a good old-fashioned pest infestation. Just wait until they get a taste of what I've got in store for them, she murmured, her lips curling into a sinister smile. No one messes with Karen Simmons and gets away with it. The following afternoon, David and Sarah gathered their courage and made their way across the street to Karen's immaculate home. Sarah took a deep breath, steeling herself for the confrontation. Remember, let's try to keep things calm and civil, David murmured, giving his wife's hand a gentle squeeze. Sarah nodded, then strode up to the front door and rang the bell, her heart pounding in her chest. After a moment, the door swung open, revealing a triumphant-looking Karen. Well, if it isn't my dear neighbors, she drawled, her voice dripping with false sweetness. To what do I owe this pleasure? David cleared his throat, trying to keep his tone neutral. Karen, we need to talk to you about the, package we received earlier today. Karen's eyes widened in feigned innocence. Package? I have no idea what you're talking about. Sarah stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. Don't play dumb with us, Karen. We know you sent us a roach bomb, and we're not going to stand for it. A sudden flash of anger crossed Karen's features, but she quickly smoothed it over with a saccharine smile. My, such accusations. I'm hurt that you would think I had anything to do with that. Cut the crap, Karen, David interjected, his voice firm. We know it was you, and we're not going to let you get away with this. We just want to live in peace, but you seem determined to make our lives a living hell. Karen let out a haughty laugh. Peace. In my neighborhood, don't make me laugh. As long as you and your spawn are disturbing the peace, I'll do whatever it takes to restore the quiet I deserve. Sarah's eyes narrowed, her hands clenching into fists. Deserve? You think you deserve to terrorize us just because you can't stand a little noise. That's not how it works, Karen. You're the one who needs to learn some manners and respect for your neighbors. Karen's expression darkened, and she stepped forward, her finger jabbing into Sarah's chest. Respect? I'll show you respect when you stop disrupting my beauty's sleep with your constant racket. This is my neighborhood, and I won't tolerate any of your nonsense. David placed a restraining hand on Sarah's arm, sensing the tension escalating. Look, Karen, we're willing to work with you on this. If the noise is really that much of a problem, maybe we can adjust our schedule or find some other compromise. But Karen simply scoffed, her disdain palpable. Compromise? With the likes of you? I don't think so. This is war, and I intend to win. With that, she slammed the door in their faces, leaving David and Sarah standing on the porch, their expressions a mix of frustration and disbelief. Well, that went about as well as I expected, David sighed, running a hand through his hair. Sarah's face was set in a determined scowl. Okay, so much for the diplomatic approach. Now it's time to fight fire with fire. As the couple turned and headed back home, Karen peered out through the window, a malicious grin spreading across her face. She had no intention of backing down, and she was more than ready to take this battle to the next level. In the days that followed, the tension between Karen and her new neighbors only continued to escalate. Despite David and Sarah's best efforts to keep the noise to a minimum, Karen remained relentless in her harassment. She called the police repeatedly, filing one noise complaint after another, even going so far as to accuse the couple of hosting wild parties. The officers, having grown weary of her constant barrage of calls, simply advised the couple to try to work things out with their neighbor. There's not much we can do if the noise levels aren't excessive, Sergeant Grimes had told them, his expression apologetic. My advice would be to find a way to compromise, or this is just going to keep going in circles. But compromise was the last thing on Karen's mind. She was determined to drive David and Sarah out of the neighborhood by any means necessary. And so, she began to escalate her tactics, going far beyond simple noise complaints. One afternoon, as David was working on the soundproofing, he noticed a strange smell wafting through the air. Furrowing his brow, he followed the scent, only to discover that the bags of insulation he had purchased had been tampered with, some kind of foul-smelling substance seeping out. Sarah, come take a look at this, he called out, his voice laced with concern. Sarah hurried over, her eyes widening in horror. Oh my God, what is that? She exclaimed, pinching her nose. David shook his head, his jaw clenched with anger. I have a feeling our dear neighbor, Karen, had something to do with this. The couple quickly disposed of the ruined insulation and set about cleaning up the mess, their frustration and worry only growing. They knew they couldn't simply ignore Karen's escalating campaign of harassment, but they were at a loss as to how to effectively counter her. As night fell, David and Sarah lay awake, their minds racing with possible solutions. Suddenly, Sarah sat up, a determined glint in her eye. "I've got it," she whispered, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "It's time we fight fire with fire." David looked at his wife, a mixture of trepidation and intrigue on his face. "What do you have in mind?" Sarah's grin widened. "Oh, just a little taste of her own medicine. It's time we show Karen Simmons that she's not the only one who can play dirty." As the couple began to plot their counter-offensive, Karen sat in her living room, a self-satisfied smirk on her face. She was certain that her latest act of sabotage would be the final nail in the coffin for her troublesome neighbors. "Just wait until they get a load of this," she murmured, her laughter echoing through the silent house. The next morning, Karen awoke to the sound of a commotion outside her window. Peering out, she was shocked to see a large group of people gathering on the sidewalk, all of them staring intently at her home. Furrowing her brow, Karen quickly threw on a robe and hurried outside, determined to get to the bottom of this disturbance. As she approached the crowd, she was met with a barrage of angry shouts and jeers. "There she is, the crazy lady herself," someone yelled, and the crowd erupted in a chorus of boos. Taken aback, Karen raised her hands in a placating gesture. "What's going on here? What's the meaning of this?" A woman with a bullhorn stepped forward, her expression fierce. "Karen Simmons, we've had enough of your entitled behavior and your campaign of harassment against your neighbors. It's time you face the consequences of your actions." Karen's eyes widened, a growing sense of unease settling in the pit of her stomach. "Consequences? I don't know what you're talking about. I'm the victim here." The woman shook her head, her grip tightening on the bullhorn. "That's where you're wrong, Karen. We've all heard about how you've been terrorizing David and Sarah, and we're not going to stand for it anymore." Suddenly, the front door of David and Sarah's house burst open, and the couple emerged, holding a large sign that read, "Neighborhood Watch. Karen's entitled rampage ends today." The crowd erupted in cheers, and Karen felt her face flush with humiliation. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, her voice shrill. David stepped forward, his expression grim. "It's simple, Karen. You've been making our lives a living hell, and we're not going to take it anymore. So we decided to take matters into our own hands and expose your despicable behavior to the entire neighborhood." Sarah joined her husband, a triumphant smile on her face. "That's right, Karen. We've documented every single one of your noise complaints, your sabotage attempts, and your outrageous behavior. And now, the whole community knows what kind of person you really are." Karen's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She was utterly speechless, her carefully constructed facade of respectability crumbling before her eyes. The crowd surged forward, chanting, "Karen's gotta go. Karen's gotta go," as the woman with the bullhorn stepped closer, her expression stern. "Karen Simmons, consider this your final warning. If you continue to harass your neighbors or engage in any other unacceptable behavior, we will take this to the authorities and make sure you face the full consequences of your actions. This neighborhood is not your personal kingdom, and we won't let you rule it with an iron fist any longer." With that, the crowd dispersed, leaving a stunned and humiliated Karen standing alone on her lawn, her dreams of suburban supremacy shattered. As David and Sarah watched the spectacle unfold, they exchanged a triumphant glance. They had finally stood up to their entitled neighbor, and the victory tasted oh so sweet. "Well, I guess that's the end of Karen's reign of terror," David said, wrapping his arm around his wife. Sarah leaned against him, a contented smile on her face. "Yes, and I'd say she got exactly what was coming to her. No more Karens in this neighborhood, not if we have anything to say about it." The couple turned and headed back inside, leaving Karen to stew in her own shame and defeat. It was a hard-won victory, but one that would make their little corner of the world a much more peaceful place.